Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read last week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. If you noticed, apologies, but I didn't get a week of reading video up last week. Not sure if you know, but there was a lot going on politically in our country last week with the inauguration and everything. So it ended up being that I was really focused on that and just didn't have a lot of mental space to read. But I did finish a few things, and let's talk about them. So the first thing I finished was Homeland. This is by Fernando Arumburu, and this was translated by Alfred MacAdam. So I kind of teased into this book a little bit as I was reading it. Kathy from The Grim Reader, I'll put a link to her channel below. She said it perfectly, that these kind of chats are about our relationships to the books while we're reading them, as much as it is just kind of a summary of how the reading experience was. And I think I talked a little bit about Homeland as I was kind of reading through it. It's a very long book. It's a very big book. I decided to do this in audio, which I think maybe is one reason that it had a different feel for me than I think some reviews that I've seen. This book was put out in 2016 by Pantheon Books, and it's set over the span of like 30 years, and it opens on the day that the Basque separatists signed a treaty with the Spanish government to ceasefire and to end kind of the violent hostilities that they had had. And it's from there we're really seeing two families that were incredibly close and how they were impacted by the separatist movement. What's so fascinating about this is it's not like they were on other sides per se. It's that they are both Basque families. They both believe and value their culture. But what ended up happening is that one of the men was more wealthy. He was more successful. He owned a business, and he was being shaken down for money. And he resented that. He tried to do what he could, but at a certain point he said, no, I'm not going to participate. And at that point, he was seen as an outsider and a traitor and branded as such by the community. He is killed. And that has this very hardening effect on the women in these two families. And so it's what I loved about the story is that it's the behind the scenes, what happens to the families, what happens to the people who are caught in this web. So we have these two very strong women. Mirin is married to Chato. Chato is the gentleman that I mentioned that was branded a traitor because he didn't want to continue to pay kind of protection money, almost like a mafia thing. And she was very good friends with Victori, and Victori is married to Hoshan. Hoshan is, a little simpler. He has a very easy job, and he just kind of lays low and kind of stays out of the way. One, because Victori is hard. She wants to get her way. She's very forceful. Well, Mirin and Victori, Chato and Hoshan, were all very close, and the children grew up together. The children being Hoshmari. Hoshmari becomes very, very important in this because he is attracted to the energy and the excitement and wants something to latch onto, and he becomes a muscle man for Eta. And ultimately, something happens, and he goes even further. Then there's other members of the family that we follow, and we kind of see how they were impacted. And it's very interesting. What happens to the parents has a ripple effect to the children, but the children all deal with it in different ways. It's such a really powerful book. It's thoughtful, but it's also melodramatic. It's funny because Juan from Just One Reader is reading East of Eden, and East of Eden has similar kind of high histrionic melodrama to it. And this does as well. There's some sections that feel like you're reading a a telenovela, you're reading a soap opera. It's like super detailed into the machinations and the relationships and all of this. But at the heart of it is identity and the questions of what is your right as an individual versus what does it mean when you are identifying as part of an other. I thought the characters were amazing, especially the women characters, very, very strong. And it's a very tense, a lot of short chapters, 125 chapters. Again, I said it's a long book, but really interesting. It gave me a lot to think about. I'll still be thinking about this for a very long time. I gave it 4.5 stars because it's not something I'll reread, but it will stay with me without a doubt. And so I wanted to thank Leo from A Little Book Life for recommending that. That was a fantastic, fantastic recommendation. Okay, next up, for the Invisible Cities project, I read from Japan, Nakano Thrift Shop. This is by Hiromi Kawakami and translated by Allison, Markin, Powell. The edition was Europa and it was published in 2005. It's a contemporary story set in this little thrift shop in Tokyo, and you get kind of a slice of life of the people in this shop, both the people who come into the shop as well as the people who work there. So you have the owner, Mr. Nakano. You have his sister, Masayo, and she's kind of like an artist. She's a little older. She hasn't gotten married and kind of wants to live her life and do her own thing, a little bit of a free spirit. And you have the person who narrates the story is Hitomi, and she is kind of like early career, just kind of starting out in her life. And there's a comfort and a charm and a warmth at the shop. But there's also, she knows that she's not going anywhere with her life. And she constantly questions, like, should I be doing something else? Is this where I should be? Is this what I should be doing? And there's a fourth person in this mix, and this is Takeo. And Takeo is a guy who works at the shop that she has a crush on. But they don't always mix. And there's some challenges in their relationship. They like each other, but there's a sexual chemistry that's a little off. This was fun. There was anxiety and dysfunction and like some angst thrown in there along with like charm and coziness. There's the kind of, I liked it, but there's a fleeting feeling to it. I don't know that it's going to really stick with me, but I did enjoy it. Now, there is one thing I will say. There's a lot of conversation from the owner about sex and sex life and stuff like that. And at first it was kind of off-putting, but at a certain point, even he admitted, he was like, oh, wait a minute, I could get in trouble for this, couldn't I? This is sexual harassment, isn't it? So I was happy to have seen that at least called out and identified. So yeah, it was good. It was, fine. It was lovely. And it was nice to read it for the Invisible Cities project. And then the next one, I'm actually going to do a full review of this because I have so much to say about this book. This was Patsy by Nicole Dennis Ben. This was put out in 2019. This was in last year's BookTube prize, but I'm surprised that it didn't get further because it's pretty exceptional. This is a story of a Jamaican woman who leaves her daughter True with her daughter's father and his legitimate family. And she has an opportunity to go to New York City. She's supposed to be on just a visitor's visa, but her intention is that she is not going to come back. She's going to leave Jamaica and go to her best friend, who is also the love of her life and is a woman who has married for what she thinks is convenience to get papers in New York and in the United States. And it's just really interesting. There's a lot to talk about. So like I said, I will do a full review of that soon. Stay on the lookout for that. And then let me talk about what I'm currently reading. So again, very slowly making my way through Proust. This is volume 2, In the Shadow of Young Girls in Flower. Then I also have, Leo and I are also reading this. This is The Eighth Life. This is by Nino Haratischvili. And it's so lovely. We are going to be doing our first check-in, so I'm going to hold off on saying anything until after I talk with him. But it's probably going to take us about 2 months. This is a chunky book. This is a multi-generational saga set in Tbilisi, Georgia, and it follows a family, so it's multi-generational. At the heart of this family and their success is due to a special chocolate recipe. So it might be some magical realism. Still haven't figured that out yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. Then I started, I have an arc that is really long overdue, and this is Bass Rock by Evie Wyld. So this is really dynamic. We've got 3 timelines of women's stories that all center in the same place, but kind of going back in time, and that are connected in some way other than just place. So really interesting. It feels very feminist. It feels very like there's a lot of strong emphasis on violence against women and the repercussions of that. So that's quite interesting. And there's some mental health issues coming in and a ghost. So far it's been really good. I'm getting some like scary vibes, which is kind of starting to freak me out a little bit. So, I'm a bit wuss. So we'll see how that gets on. And yeah, so that's what I'm currently reading. I did just go to the library because this came in. This is a brand new release. Y'all know I love my Midfords. This is Jessica Fellows. She is Julian Fellows' niece, and she helped with some of the story writing for Downton Abbey. He, of course, is the creator of Downton Abbey. And this is the Midford Murders series. I'm sure I don't get the glare. And this is the Midford Trial. And so we're focusing on Diana and Unity in this one. So this is just fun. It kind of takes the form of a caregiver who has joined the family, and it has helped out in different aspects, brought in by Nancy to kind of help the family. And so she's very intimate. She knows them. And so she has a entree and an eye for all the things that are happening around them. And there's usually some kind of mystery at the heart that she tries to solve. So it's just really fun. It's like an adjacent imaginary reality to the Mitford story. And then other than that, I have a ton of books that I'm looking forward to getting into, really looking forward to February. I'm just feeling really optimistic and hopeful. I've been using Storygraph. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I'm trying to get away from Goodreads. So I'm moving more over to Storygraph, kind of parallel pathing right now, but I've started tagging and tagging smaller details that allow me to have better memory when it comes to doing tag videos, and be able to draw connections between books. So that's been fun. And yeah, I guess that's about it. As always, I'll close with saying that we are still in a global pandemic. So please, maintain safe social distance, wear your mask, wash your hands, and don't touch your face. I'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.